What up, big dogs? So, I've been wanting to make this video for a minute now. Just downloaded these new OEM pack bikes for MX bikes, okay? And I just can't figure out this system that MX Bikes has for the way they come out with these different bikes, dynos, bike models, all this kind of stuff. And I guess it would be a little bit easier explaining how MX Simulator works first so that I can explain the differences with MX Bikes, right? So the way MX Simulator works is the developer of the game, JLV, comes out with all these different bike dynos, as they call it, right? So that's the bike speed, handling, the actual nature of the bike itself, right? So you've got all these different dynos on MX Simulator going back all these different years. You've got 2011 KTM whatever dynos, you've got 2017 Husqvarna 450 dynos, Honda dynos and stuff like that. But they all have that basic look to them, right? They have that basic original MX Simulator fenders from 2007. All of them have those very, very basic looks to them, right? Because the developer doesn't want to get all in trouble with the, then they would have to actually get licensing from Suzuki or Husqvarna or Honda or whatever the case may be to put it in the game like that. But the way the developer of MX Simulator does it is he just uses SXF 450 or CR 450 or whatever, and he doesn't actually use the names, and he doesn't put any logos on the bike or anything like that, so he kind of skirts around the the legality, potentially copyright legality issues that he would have with that. So what happens is he'll come out with all those different dynos, right? And then your community people in the game will go in there and make different skins for those dynos, right? They'll go in there and even different models as well, right? Like you can put any bike model and skin on any one of those dynos so that you can have any look to the bike that you want, but it has the characteristic of any of those original dynos of the game, right? So technically, you don't have to go download any extra mod or anything like that to be on the fastest, best bikes on MX Simulator. It may look a little bit crummy. It may look super old, outdated, Minecraft level looking shit if you don't put, modded out skins or stuff like that on it, but it's still that dyno at the core, it's still that speed level at the core, okay? The way MX Bikes works, which is super bizarre, I still can't wrap my head around this. The way MX Bikes works is the developer comes out with these, default bikes in the game, default bike dynos in the game, just like the developer of MX Simulator does, right? But instead of everybody using those different from Poboso dynos on MX Bikes, you've got this whole separate universe of these OEM packs, right? These OEM bike packs that you'll download on MX Bikes, but they're not just skins. They're not just different models or different skins. They're completely different power curves. They're completely different, handling, feeling to the bikes, everything like that. They're actually different bikes in the game, made from community people in the game. Modders of the game are going in there and actually making completely different dynos on MX Bikes. Do you see the difference? MX Simulator, the dynos are coming from the developer himself. On MX Bikes, the dynos that everybody's riding are not coming from Poboso, the developer himself. This is the part I cannot wrap my head around it, right? Even if you don't want to download a single mod for any of these games, you can still ride on the fastest bikes in the game on MX Simulator without downloading a single mod. But when you go to MX Bikes and you start trying to ride on those default the default bike dynos of the game, those KTM looking orange MX bikes from Poboso bikes in the game, they're too slow. They're slower than whatever that newest OEM mod pack for the game is. So anybody that's even halfway seriously playing MX bikes is not even playing on the dynos from the developer. Do you see how weird that is? Do you see how bizarre that is? That's the part I just can't wrap my head around it, because to me, I'm having trouble figuring out, I know why they're doing it. I know why they're making OEM bike packs for MX bikes, because they want to make it to where you can go in there and download this modded OEM pack where you can actually have Suzuki's, Hondas, Kawi's, all these different kind of bikes in there. And then that's what everybody rides in the game versus the default stock dynos. But like on MX Simulator, everybody's on the same playing field. You're playing with the dynos of that particular version of MX Simulator. Everybody's playing on that same, those same bikes from the developer, but they just put a different skin on it. They just put a different model and a skin on it, but it's still the bike. The power feeling of the bike handling is still all from the developer. With MX bikes, you're getting entirely different, not only bike models and skins, but also the characteristics of the bike, like the power curves, the speed, the handling, all that kind of stuff is coming from, the kind of the the weight of the bike, I'm sure, is different. It has to affect certain elements of the handling and everything like that with the different bikes. Obviously, going from like a 250 to a 450. They've got people on MX bikes that's made like 85cc modded bikes, like 50cc modded bikes and all that, which is not from the developer of MX bikes at all. It's not from the creator of MX bikes at all, right? So that sounds cool and all in theory, but the real reality of it is you're sitting there riding on these new OEM packs on MX bikes, and you just hope the people these community dudes that made these official OEM bike mod packs for MX bikes, you just hope that whatever they're doing with the power curves and the handling and all that stuff with those bike dynos themselves are proper for the game or are correct for the game. Do you see my problem with it there? And maybe and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not deep enough into the MX bikes community to really know this or not, but how close to these dudes that are making these OEM bike packs from MX bikes, how close are they working with Poboso? Do you know what I mean? It would seem like to me that maybe it's a case of the Poboso dudes are making these OEM packs somehow, because obviously they don't want to they can't just come out there and make Suzuki, Honda, Kawi bikes for the default version of MX bikes, or they would have to get licensing and all that stuff for it. So maybe that's the workaround for it, but I'm still confused because all these different dudes that post these OEM packs for MX bikes, these official OEM packs, they're not Poboso themselves. You know what I mean? And technically they can't be Poboso themselves, or it would be the creator of the game making a real life manufactured bike pack for the game, which would technically be, against the law if you don't actually have, the licensing to be able to make Suzukis and Hondas and all that stuff like that. But that's what I'm saying. It's as if they've skirted around that, and now you just got these community people that are just making these mods, right, that are technically not the developers of the game, but they're making these Suzuki, Honda, Kawi mods that are totally different. But the thing about it I just can't figure out is the fact that, are these random community people just saying, you know what, I'm going to make the Kawasaki have, 2 more horsepower than the Honda of this OEM dyno pack, or I'm going to make the Honda handle better than the Yamaha, or have, smoother than this bike or whatever. Do you see the problem when that's not the developer doing that? It's a community mod person doing that? Do you see the problem I have in my head? Whereas like MX Simulator, the only thing that the community modders are changing about it are the skins of it. You know what I mean? That's all they're changing with it. They're just changing the look of it. They're not changing the actual stats of the bike. But that is what they're doing with the MX Bikes OEM packs. They're literally going in there and changing the stats of these different bikes. So, I don't know. Some of you boys that are real deep in the MX Bikes community, definitely let me know down in the comments of this video. It just seems to me like with what's going on with MX Bikes, you're going to run into a lot of problems. I guess what I'm trying to say is what stops some random community dude from taking that official OEM, let's just say the Honda 450 bike of that newest OEM pack. What stops some random community dude from taking that and then adding, 5 horsepower to it, making the suspension or making the handling or whatever of the dyno of that Honda better than that official OEM pack? What stops that dude from just coming out with a better than the OEM pack Honda, and then everybody would just download that and play with that? What, you see what I'm saying? I'm confused by that. Whereas like MX Simulator, nobody's in there actually making, no modded person, no community custom mod type person is in there making different dynos or different handling to the bikes or different any of that. They're just making skins for it. You know what I mean? They're just making different models and different skins. They're not actually changing that those original bike characteristics in the game that were made by the developer JLV. He's the one that made all those dynos, and all the community people on MX Simulator are just putting different skins on it. But it's literally the opposite on MX Bikes. And it just seems to me like you would run into a lot of issues with the system that MX Bikes has, right? Like I'm saying, what stops Joe Blow Jimmy from downloading that new OEM pack and just adding more traction to the ergonomics of the bike or whatever? I don't know all the little settings they can actually change with it as far as the dyno itself. Like, I don't know what kind of handling settings they can change, but what stops them from just making it better handling? So then they've took that OEM bike, made better handling and a little bit more speed on it, and then you've basically hacked the game. If you're riding with that like in an online server or whatever, your own custom dyno, as you would call it, do you see the potential for issues there? Do you see the potential for hacking / cheating / problems with it? Because the people that are pro racing are not even riding with the standard dynos from the developer of MX Bikes. They're not even in there actually riding with the standard bike characteristics from the developer Poboso themselves. Nobody's riding with that shit. So what stops somebody from just riding on a faster, better custom dyno? You see what I'm saying? Somebody please explain this to me, because I can't wrap my head around it for MX Bike. I just can't figure it out. It's as if a lot of people just think that everybody's just going to go in there and download the new dynos, the new OEM pack dynos, and then just ride that? But you know how many scammers and scam artists and hackers and bullshitters there is in this simulator type dirt bike racing community, because everybody wants to win a pro race so they can go tell their girlfriend they're amazing at a video game, right? But like, I feel like it's like so much more easy to kind of skirt around the rule set and kind of, stalk through the shadows of cheating on MX Bikes than it would be on MX Simulator, because like on MX Simulator, it's just common knowledge that, your community people are not going to be able to affect the actual bike's characteristics itself at all. You know that for a fact. So, if anybody's riding on there with something different than the standard dynos from the developer of MX Simulator, then they're cheating. They're literally hacking the bike. They're changing the characteristic of the bike to hack it and make it better or different or whatever. But like on MX bikes, that just seems to be like a common practice in the modding community of MX bikes to go in there and make a completely different dyno of a bike or a completely different characteristic to a bike. You know, with the 85cc bikes and all the other crazy, the pit bikes and all that, even though those are all really cool on MX bikes, I can't figure it out in a pro racing type logical sense where you're trying to keep everybody on the same playing field. I just can't figure that out. And it's not as apparent as to like a new player to MX bikes. That's going to be so confusing going in there. You know, every new player to MX bikes is just going to ride on those standard bikes that come with the game, right? Which are not even to the same competitive level to the bikes that everybody else is on in the game. Everybody else is on that newest OEM bike pack, but then all the new players that just get into the game, they're on the crummy, shitty, slower, you know, default from Puboso bike dynos in the game. So they're like at a disadvantage because they don't understand you have to go over here and download this separate OEM pack mod for the game to actually be on the fastest bikes in the game. Whereas like MX Simulator, if you download the newest version of MX Simulator, it's the most up-to-date, newest version, you're going to have all the fastest bikes in the game. They just won't look very good. You know, it's all a look thing, but you're still going to have the fastest, best dynos in the game without downloading a single mod of any kind. I feel like it's actually more beginner-friendly the way MX Simulator is when it comes to that, because you quickly understand, okay, all these different dynos in the game are just the characteristics of the bike, and then I can go over here and download any sort of, you know, modded skin or modded model or whatever that can plop on top of that original dyno characteristic bike from the developer. But MX Bikes is not like that at all. Do you see where my confusion is coming from? Do you see where my concern is coming from here? I'm just trying to make this video to get some more information on how all this shit works or what they're planning on doing with it. And do you see what I'm saying? It just seems bizarre to me that you're riding on bike dynos with certain characteristics that weren't actually made by the developer. Like, somebody make it make sense for me here on MX Bikes, because I can't figure it out. Like, why is everybody, the, you know, quote unquote best bikes in the game, fastest bikes in the game, were not even made by the developer here? Or it was, but they have to upload it from like a different creator or a different name so it doesn't look like they made it. I don't know. Either way, it just don't make any sense. Like, it's just not, it's not adding up in my head what they're doing with these OEM packs for MX bikes. It's just not making any sense. I understand why these modders are doing this. If it is just strictly modded, you know, community people doing it, and Puboso has nothing to do with that, I understand why they're doing it, obviously, because they're trying to come out with a OEM bike pack where everybody can see everybody else's OEM bikes and it all looks better, makes everything look better, everything like that. I get why they're doing it, but there's so many more confusing elements to it. You know, obviously on MX Simulator, you know, if you don't have somebody's bike skin or whatever, it's going to show that basic 2007 Minecraft level bike on the track. But at least you're riding on a bike dyno with the characteristics that were made by the developer and not just made by some community modder. Do you see what I'm saying? The core of it makes so much more sense to me on MX Simulator than it does with the way they're doing this OEM pack shit for MX bikes. But maybe I'm just missing something. Maybe I'm just not understanding it in a way. But I just don't understand that. Because like I'm saying, what stops, you know, whoever made that newest OEM pack, well, what stops somebody like me from going in there and making my own bikes with better handling and better speed and better traction and better all this other shit, and then me come out with my own OEM pack for MX bikes? And then everybody's going to come over here and download, you know, my own OEM pack because those bikes are actually statistically and, you know, they're actually better at the core. Their speed is better, the handling's better, the traction's better. What stops this game from just all these different community people from making better bikes? Do you know what I mean? Because you're not even running off of a dyno characteristic from the developer. Do you understand what I'm saying? Do you see what I'm saying there? Like, what stops people from doing that on MX bikes? I don't know. That's what I'm trying to figure out right now. So either way, if you guys could help me out, comment down below. That would be sick. I'll take a look at that. Appreciate you. See you boys on that next video. Later, dudes.